My name is Jabaar. That is my sign name. I work at DEFSA as a provincial director in Western Cape, South Africa. I am deaf and I'm proud to be deaf. The reason for that is because deafness is my culture. Within socializing, many people think that it's difficult for deaf people to socialize, and their reasons are because they cannot hear, and there's a lot of assumptions that there's no life for the deaf just because they have the hearing disability, which is not the case. Yes, there's barriers for the deaf, but it does not mean that they cannot socialize. Many times people look at me and they shame or they pity me because of the assumptions they have about how do I live my life? How was I able to achieve? And it shouldn't be that way. Deaf are able to do anything. This presentation that I'm doing today, it's important to also centralize sign language, firstly, secondly, deaf culture, and thirdly, the deaf community. I will also explain why deaf schools are important. There's deaf culture, the deaf identity developing within the deaf culture and how that's done, and the deaf community in South Africa. We look at ourselves as normal human beings. It's our language. Sign language is a natural, normal language accepted by the community of the deaf. There is a history, tradition, values, behavior linked to deaf culture, which makes the community strong in their deaf identity. It is true that deaf people cannot hear. Maybe pronunciation is also not clear. However, I do not feel that we are handicapped. My view is that we are the same. We are human beings alike. Only our language differs, which is sign language and not spoken language. It's just that we have different communication methods. Within the deaf community, how it was established and how the deaf culture was established, which includes diversity, different races, genders, which is not really linked to those things, but whether you are use total communication or sign language, you are all included in the deaf community. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities states that you need to recognize and promote the deaf and sign language. Schools for the deaf. It's very important that in the deaf schools within the communities, your language is being acknowledged as well as your culture. The reason for that is when a deaf child enters the school, they need to feel that they belong somewhere. They need to feel a sense of community. Also remember, 90 to 95% of deaf children, many of their families are hearing. A deaf child already grows up with no language accessibility, so they enter the deaf community to gain that. And it's because they cannot hear the spoken language in their homes, and that impacts them negatively. Teachers in the classrooms, they celebrate deaf culture through sign language at all times, and that's how the children have full understanding. That also assists them in gaining confidence while acquiring the subjects in class. And that's why when they finish school, they can already integrate themselves into the hearing world, and that they are able to do so without giving up. Hearing teachers, those that work specifically in the deaf schools, it's important that you respect the language of the deaf culture. For example, myself as a deaf person and the deaf community, we identify ourselves as deaf with a capital D because it is our culture, it's a part of our community. The capital D for deaf is, for example, identifying with a person that's French or Hindu, also identify themselves with a capital letter. The small d for deaf and hard of hearing is utilized as well, but not in the deaf community. The view in the deaf community differs from the view to the hearing community. We've encountered a time where someone has mentioned, I am deaf or hard of hearing, and it is not linked to deaf culture, mostly from the hearing identify as such. There are hearing people that are able to sign, but bear in mind that it's not their first language. In media as well, whether it's newspapers, TV, they use the word hearing impaired because they feel that it covers all those that are not able to hear. But the deaf community itself, we don't feel the terminology hearing impaired is appropriate. Hearing impaired sounds to us as if our ears are physically broken and that is why we cannot hear. So we don't accept that terminology. We are proud to be deaf and we don't accept it as such. There are people that identify themselves as hearing impaired. Many of those people that identify themselves as hearing impaired, they don't internalize or integrate themselves in the deaf community. The word Ubuntu culture, or the word hearing, or the sign hearing, also involves the fact that many people can see, you can see that you are hearing, and that's why we use that sign hearing. And that is part of our culture, identifying you as a hearing person. In deaf culture, we rely heavily on fully visual aspects. The community is very close-knit. They have their own communication methods, and there's no communication barriers. The community includes deaf people, whether it's in larger groups, where the larger community advocates for their rights, for their freedom, and deaf people enjoy also social gatherings. And it's the same in the deaf schools. If you teach deaf children and you are hearing, it's important to remember that the children in your class, they need to feel that they are a part of the deaf community. Maybe in your class, you've got a deaf assistant. Show the children and the assistant that they need to have a good relationship with one another and that there needs to be mutual respect between the hearing and the deaf, so that the children grow up with that respect of their own culture and their language as well as the cultures that they encounter. Respecting sign language also means that you as a teacher needs to be fluent in sign language and be able to teach using the language to make sure that the children fully understand you. If you feel that it's not easy, the school strongly provides a center of community where you can improve your sign language skills. So always try to use sign language. Whatever country you are teaching in, and whether the history of the country differs and the culture of the country differs, it's also important to bear in mind that when you teach the language itself, it needs to be a deaf person involved. The reason for a deaf person being the best teacher is because it's their first language and their culture. And that is very important. Your classroom also, it's important to bear in mind that sign language is a visual language, which means there should be communication rules, and the communication rules differ. For example, with sign language, you need to maintain eye contact at all times. That means that the person is focused and that you have an engagement. The eye contact also symbolizes that you can defer communication and not sign without looking directly at the person. The person won't be able to understand if you're talking to them or to someone else. It is the deaf way. It's also important that there is lighting in your classroom so that eye contact is sufficient, not bright lights or dim lights. It needs to be sufficient lighting so that clear eye contact can be made. In deaf culture, it's also important to acknowledge facial expressions and body language. Those two aspects is included in sign language. That is easy for a deaf person to then identify visually and not verbally. Whether it's smaller facial expressions, larger facial expressions, deaf people can identify easily. If a teacher's facial expression is blank, the children will get bored and they will feel that they're not interested. And it will make them feel as if the work is not important. Also, if a teacher is continuously speaking, just like a hearing person continuously speaking, it's the same feeling. So with the culture and the language difference, your challenges are there. However, there are many resources that you can obtain to empower yourself and empower yourself working with the deaf community.